Long before award-winning chef Andrew Zimmerman graduated at the top of his class in culinary school, he dreamed of becoming a rock star. But he put down his guitar and picked up a set of kitchen knives and went from composing music to composing dishes. His creative talents landed him the top spot in the kitchen of Sepia in Chicago, where he remains executive chef.
He's been nominated for Best Chef Great Lakes by the James Beard Foundation many times, and Star Chefs chose him as 2011 Rising Star Chef. We're thrilled to welcome this culinary rock star to the dish. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Tell us what you brought.
Well, we brought a seasonally appropriate smattering of hopefully delicious things, starting with a spice lacquered duck. It's a whole roasted duck that's been glazed with sugar and fish sauce and a bunch of different spices.
Do you roast it and then glaze it after it's almost?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We roast it mostly, and then we put the glaze on it just before it's done, because otherwise the glaze would burn. And then we also have some Brussels sprouts with bacon and chestnuts and some duck fat roasted potatoes, celery root and apple puree.
Delicious. I can taste the duck fat in the potatoes.
Oh, good. Thanks.
I want to ask you, we joked so much about you starting off as a musician. When did you make that transition? When were you like, this is what I really want to be doing?
I'm not a very smart guy, so it took me until my middle 20s to realize that every time my band played, I lost money, and every time I showed up and cooked something, I got paid. So eventually, you figure it out.
And you ended up in Chicago, which by the time you went there was not exactly a culinary center. It's emerged as one. But I mean, so what took you to Chicago?
It was a couple of things. I think one of the main things was that my wife's family is from there, so we already had that connection. And then when I moved there, Charlie Trotter had his restaurant, and there were a number of other really, really terrific chefs. It was very much just about to become the dining destination that I think it really is now. And so it seemed like it made good sense. There were a lot of terrific restaurants. Rick Bayless was there already, and a number of other people that were doing great work. So.
You went to culinary school here in New York, though, so I'm just curious, when you were making that transition, were you a little nervous? Did you think at the time, even though the evolution was happening, were you thinking, gosh, I'm leaving the city that's known for such great food?
On a certain level, yes, and on another level, I thought that the dining scene and the restaurant scene in New York is so hyper competitive that moving to Chicago, which I shouldn't really undersell it, like the dining scene in Chicago is very, very competitive too, but not maybe in the same way. So I thought there might be some really good opportunities for me there, and so that's what we did.
When you took over the kitchen at Sepia in 2009, I think it was, and you immediately put your stamp on it. What was your goal there?
What I wanted to do with Sepia was I thought that we had a really, really beautifully designed restaurant that my business partner, Manuel Noni, had put together. Lovely, lovely room, and I wanted to make sure that the food echoed that and lived up to the room you were eating in. And I didn't think that it necessarily did initially, and I wanted to bring some of my take on that to the restaurant.
You talk about that relationship. I've also heard you say something along the lines of, there's no place else where the producer and the client are so intrinsically connected. What do you mean by that? I mean, is the chef really part of it?
Well, for sure the chef's part of it. I mean, it's my responsibility to make sure that the food is designed and executed and all those things. But really more to it, there's not a lot of other jobs that you can have where you make something that people put in their bodies. You could maybe you make a rug and somebody buys it and they put it on their floor, and that's terrific. But it's not as personal a relationship as it is if you actually sit down and eat something that I made for you. And it's also one of the other sides of that is that it's a very nurturing kind of thing to do. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who he's a happiness expert. And
we would like to meet him next week.
You should have him on. He's an interesting guy. But we were talking about cooking, and he said, tell me something about it, and in relation to what he does. And I said, look, it's an inherently positive act, cooking, because you're nurturing yourself or somebody else. So, I get a lot of gratification by doing it.
Right. Well, I'm enjoying putting this beverage in my body.
It's good, right?
Yeah. Is it nurturing you?
It's sort of a riff on a Manhattan. It's called Cat's Pajamas. Our beverage manager put it together. Super good.
I know. I was going to tell you I had a deep exhale after having one sip of that.
Quickly, what's in it?
Bourbon, Carpano Antica, and then a little bit of Amaro, and a really good, proper maraschino cherry.
Okay.
This is beautiful. Perfect time for the holidays also. I want to hand you this dish.
Oh, thank you very much.
And as you sign it, we want to ask you if you could have this meal with any person, past or present, who would that person be?
I would go for Paul Desmond, who was the saxophone player for the Dave Brubeck Quartet.
Yeah, I like that one.
And maybe Del Close, who was one of the founders of Second City.
That's a very interesting table.
Yeah, you thought about that one, Chef Andrew Zimmerman. Thank you so much.